Yeah, welcome back to the fourth instalment of the Intellectual Abattoir podcast. I kind of feel it's not that fitting to do my flippant usual little introduction, zany, with such a serious subject. We've got Joe Zalias is my guest today, the great Joe Zalias, stand-up comedian based in Yorkshire, around the sort of Leeds, Sheffield area. Met him. We get into that. I'm not going to give any spoilers on this. It was quite deep. I should probably give a trigger warning. If anyone's triggered by any sort of like childhood trauma, traumatized by trauma. If anyone's triggered by any childhood trauma, just be careful, because Joe's been on a spiritual and a personal journey. Still on. We all are, but he did take a hallucinogenic, psychedelic drug, and so it's a very pronounced before and after. I get the impression when people do that kind of thing. There's it's like BC and AD. What's fucking Jesus? I know BC. What's AD? Anno Domini, isn't it? I never could work that out. Anyway, Joe Zalias is a great guy. Really honest. I hope you don't think I was glazing him up too much, but I am so impressed and awestruck by his honesty and his propensity and appetite to look within. I mean, I think we could all do a bit more of that. I know I certainly could. But anyway, it's a really, really interesting episode. I don't think that we got through 5-10% of what we could have, but there's only so much you can cram into a digestible podcast. So anyway, let's get into it. So here he is on the Skype machine, the one, the only, Joe Zalias. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, actually. I'm pretty good.
Because I remember we met. I've seen you around. You know, when you're in comedy, you see people's names and pictures around for ages, but we hadn't actually met. I only think it was probably about 2 years ago, just post-pandemic, and it was such a memorable way to meet someone, because I walked into could you remember? I walked into a green room. Not just mid-conversation, but I think you were mid-sentence talking to another act about some pretty deep, like a really life-changing stuff. And the other act, bless him, had a bit of a startled. He had a bit of a startled look in his eyes. But I don't know. There seemed like something threw us together that day. I was ready to pick up what you were laying down, and I was very much walked in the room, and I was very much like, oh no, talk to me. I need to hear what you're saying. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do, yeah. And I always think you can always tell the better the comedian is, the deeper the chats are backstage.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast. I'm talking to people that it's not, but people that have like beliefs that are outside the tram lines. So, did you want to go into? Cause I think you had just done a life-altering experience just before that.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So we're jumping straight into
it, Joe.
Yeah. No lube, straight in. I like it. Okay, so yeah, I can't remember exactly the month we'd met in, but I think it might have been 2 years ago, September.
Sounds about right.
Probably sounds about right. And I just broke up with my long-term partner who I was with for about 6 years, and that's how the conversation started between me and the other act. He was saying, "Oh, I was Donna doing," and I was like, "Oh, we broke up." And then he asked why, and then I was like, "Okay, this is it." So the reason we broke up is I was cheating on her. I always have. I've always had a really messed up relationship with sex. I've always done that type of thing, and I hated myself. It came to the point where I loved her. I really, really loved her as well. That's the thing. Really loved her, but I just couldn't stop. And I tried for long periods of time to stop what I was doing. And then I'd end up falling and crumbling, doing it again, feeling guilty. And it got to the point where I was so bad. I remember I was driving to see a woman who I was going to cheat on her with, and I was crying in the car on the way there because I didn't want to do it.
Right.
But I couldn't stop myself. And I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? There's something so deeply wrong with me.
Because so that is obviously classic addiction and addictive behaviour. Like you will hear of drug addicts saying that their moment that when they were on their way to meet their dealer to score, they'd be crying. So in that moment of when you were crying in the car, was you aware of it was an addiction at this point, or did you just think what the fuck's going on sort of thing?
I don't think I was aware it was an addiction.
Okay.
No, I was just.
But looking back at that, but now you would look back and say it was, right?
Oh, 100%.
But when you were deep in it, I think addiction's like a parasite that tells you you're not addicted, because once you realise there's a parasite, then you're going to get the dewormer, right? So it's tricking you that it's not there. So anyway, sorry, you're in the car on the way to meet someone, which is you would think an addict would be using the behaviour to feel better about themselves, but obviously you've spiralled to the point where it's making you feel worse, and you're in tears.
Yeah. And I was like, I've got to do something about it. And that's like after that point, that's when I started to accept that I was an addict. And I started researching. I just started researching everything. And I stumbled across something that's not common in the West at all. I've heard of it before, but I never really took much notice. And it was called Ayahuasca.
Right.
For those who don't know what that is, it's like one of the most, it's the highest hallucinogenic on the planet. They've been doing it in the Amazon for 4,000 years, and they use it. Like I read the research on addiction and its power to literally. I'd read of stories of like heroin addicts doing it once and coming out and being totally healed of their addiction. No cold turkey.
Yeah.
Just done. So I was like, I'm doing that. So that's what I did. I found a place and went and did it. And that's when everything changed for me. So
it's interesting, isn't it? Because the ayahuasca, like you can say it could be heroin, which is, you know, we're told, well, I've never done heroin, is very difficult to get, like very addictive. And it could be sex. People can be addicted. I always think food's probably one of the worst addictions to have, because you can't cold turkey from food. You'll die. You've got to eat, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to matter which head the multi-headed dragon. It just seems like the ayahuasca kills the dragon at the root, doesn't it? That's what I've heard. I mean, I've never done it. So you found this place that does ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And I've heard it's a pretty uncomfortable medicinal experience. It's certainly not recreational, is it?
No, definitely not.
So how
if you went as a recreation, you'd hate it.
Yeah. So how was your experience on it? Do you remember, like, because when I have done drugs, there's always that moment you think, I think I've got sold a dud, and then you go, oh no, actually it's crept up on me. I think I've been high for an hour and I haven't. I'm too high to know I'm high. So can you talk us through the actual physical experience of it?
Yeah, there was absolutely no point where I thought, I've been given a dud. Yeah. So walk into this place. It's like it's a retreat centre. It's run by a hippie, like a proper hippie guy, little dude. And I remember like looking at this guy and just thinking, what can this little weasel tell me about life? That's
the old Joe, if we want the unenlightened Joe thinking, right?
For sure. I looked at him, I was like, who the hell is this guy? Anyway, we sat around in this circle, we drank it's like a little bit of like sludge tea. Banged that in. We obviously did loads of meditating and stuff to prepare, but then I'm sat there and then all of a sudden it just went bang, and then I was in this, it was like Aztec colours and things dancing about, and then I was in that realm and I was like, oh shit.
Really?
What have I done? And then I look up at him who's leading the ceremony sort of thing. And I look at him and I'd gone from how can this weasel teach me anything to thank God this mighty incredible warrior's here to hold my hand through this experience. Like
a Sherpa halfway up Everest, I guess. All of a sudden your life feels in his hands.
Yeah, it was. And I'm looking at him, it's totally different in the spiritual world, let's say. He was like, he was there to hold my hand, and I was a little boy.
Right. So did you feel like you actually regressed, or are you using that as a metaphor? Do you feel like you did regress back through your life a bit?
I say regress. I mean, so what happened as soon as the medicine took hold of me properly, it was like the ghost of Christmas past.
Right. Grabbed
hold of my hand and went, okay, let's show you all the things you blocked out of your childhood and why you are like you are. And my stuff. Yeah.
Was it that sort of like instant, like a light on?
It was literally like this TV screen kind of appeared across all my vision, and then I went into it, and I was in a room that I instantly felt abject terror of being in, because I recognised it, and then it just made me relive sexual abuse from my childhood, essentially.
Wow. And was that off the bat then in the experience?
Instant.
Oh my God, Joe, I didn't realise it was like that. I thought, well, I don't know. One has to imagine if they haven't done it. I sort of thought it might have been, it sort of like gently picked at the fight, but this was slap. And then, so how long have you got left in an altered state to process that?
Well, I mean, it took me through it again and again and again, and I was arguing with it as well, with the experience, and I'm saying, even though I felt it all through my body, I just knew. It was like, so like, I remember. But I blocked it out totally in real life. Totally blocked it out. And it kept, and I kept arguing with it. I was like, this can't be real. And then again, just like the Ghost of Christmas Past, it had changed the vision, and I'd been part of my childhood I did remember, but it had shown me in that context. So lots of things. So, for example, for a long period as a child, I had bald patches because I was tearing my hair out because I was so stressed. It showed me that. It showed me at one point as a kid, I was like torturing insects and bullying other kids and being evil. Do you know what I mean? It showed me this sort of stuff as a kid, and I was arguing with it. It take me back to other memories of like, so some of the abuse of mine. Obviously, it wasn't all sexual, but there was things I remembered as a kid that was abusive. But I didn't. I've told stuff about this on stage because I found it funny before. But like I remembered like things like my abuser used to, like, I put weight on as a kid, and he'd run around, he'd grab hold of my like rolls of fat and going slab grab, until I cried myself to sleep, and all these sorts of things that I've kind of laughed off. I've told stories about on stage, and he showed me these things, and I was like, that was just my childhood. That you
normalize it, don't you, to cope?
Normalize, and then what it did in the vision took me out of the vision and put one of my children in it. The second my own children were in it, I was like, that's torture, like, get away from my... And the penny dropped. Oh, I was being tortured.
Did you ever imagine yourself in the role as your abuser then? Because obviously the experiences showed you, look, you wouldn't tolerate this to your children. Did you sort of like then sort of because I know what it's like, and when you've got people in your life that you kind of make excuses for them. Oh, that's just what he's like, and I didn't have the best childhood, but who did? But like, when you have children yourself, if you go, God, I would never do that, and it's sort of like, but I think so. Did you sort of like see it from? Because obviously the abuser was someone close to you. I mean, that must just be such a rug pull. Like your whole life as you know it's different, right? That second.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, in that second, everything made sense, and it showed me. I mean, so timescales. You're talking the first, like, so I did it 3 days in a row.
Right.
The first day I was probably under for 8 hours. The second probably 8 hours, and the third day, everybody else were coming out of that experience after about 8 hours, and it kept me in for probably 19 hours.
Do you think it knew you weren't ready to leave yet?
It just had other things to do and show me, and it's time isn't the same in there.
Right. Yeah.
There's no such thing as time. So when I say 8 hours, the things it was showing me and how much I experienced, like I did a life sentence in prison.
Yeah, I've heard of people like Ari Shafir smoked salvia and said he lived in the bottom of a lake for 10 years and he was like under, you know.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You said about the guy. Oh, he can't, like the old Joe, the unenlightened Joe said, "Oh, what's this little weasel going to be able to do?" And then obviously that ego was stripped, and I guess like you said, you sort of like tortured insects and were a bit of a bully and stuff. Was that all the creation of this previous Joe to protect you, or as a defense mechanism?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. I mean, I was a really sensitive, lovely kid, and all like stuff when something happens like that to you, like lots of things like that, and you've got to learn to protect yourself. And I think that, you know, the cheating and stuff as well, that all came, that was
It
all
all
part
sounds
and
like it's
part.
all connected from that one. It's all like it's all.
Then,
Yeah, I think when you're a sensitive kid, right? Like, so say like someone would go, "Oh, you're putting on weight," and grab you, and I would get so upset about that. And this might be me talking out my ass, but sometimes if you sort of get angry at yourself for being sensitive, then when something serious like abuse does happen, you can sort of bottle that and go, "Oh, I'm so sensitive," but like you sort of lose the line of where you should actually, where it's justifiable to get really upset. Do you know what I mean? So I find that oversensitive people can get to a point where they get so callous because they get angry at themselves. I get angry at myself if I get offended. If someone says something that bothers me, I replay it and replay it and replay it, and then I get angry at myself. Why are you doing this?
yeah, definitely. And I think you can, like, when you're a sensitive person, you can't actively repress things. You can't like specifically repress things. So you either become repressed or you don't. So like,
Yeah.
if you repress everything, you can't repress
That's what
selectively.
I'm trying to get at. You just blanket everything. Like I'm never going to touch any of that. So anyway, you did 19 hours. And it sounds like you have to be told how long you've done when you come out. You've got no idea by the sounds of it. And
No.
sorry, before we go into it, so the first, you got balls to go in the second day. Was you at all worried about? I don't want to go back in there, sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I wanted to go home immediately. I wanted to go back, but um, yeah, everything in me wanted to go back. It was horrifying, terrifying. It was the worst. The first day was as bad as it gets.
Right.
But I knew that I'd signed up for 3 days. The shaman who was leading it, he says Mother Ayahuasca knows what you've signed up to do, knows how long you're going to be there for. So you have to complete your journey, and that's it.
And so you come out, and are you aware that genie ain't going back in the bottle? I've got to address it. There's no option to put it back down in a box, is there? Or did you feel like you're different? Did it change your outlook on it as well as just showing you the events?
Did it change what? Sorry.
Did it change like your outlook? Like instead of just showing you, oh, this repressed memory, did it also give you a appetite for correcting and changing it, or did you think it would? There's no way you could have put it back in a repressed box, is there?
I probably could. I mean, I tried actually when I
You
came
did
back
try.
out. Although I will say I tried to put that abuse back in, but it totally changed everything about me.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
It just took the addiction away. It took food addiction away as well. I've always had real addiction to certain foods and that. It took it all away, and it was. I can only explain it as like I'd been suffering my entire life, and I didn't know what it felt like to not suffer. And it took it away, and I was like, wow, this is what it feels like to not be utterly traumatized. And I made literally, I burned my whole life down. I told my partner the truth about everything, like absolutely everything.
Did that feel like a part of the healing process? Did you feel relieved?
No, I didn't feel any relief. It was horrendous. I hated every second of it.
Right.
I actually, at one point, I was driving over to see her, and I was like thinking about swerving my car into oncoming traffic because I didn't want to do it so bad. And it was horrendous. Yeah, everything about it was horrendous. I didn't enjoy. I didn't feel relief, just desperate.
So what was? Did you just know you had to do it? There was no rational like, oh, I need to do it, X, Y, Z, pros and cons. It just something you had to do.
I think I understood. I finally understood after, whatever 35 years, what real love actually looked like. And real love is truth, and it's honest, and it's unpalatable, and it's uncompromising in honesty. So I had to tell her everything. I wanted to stay with her. I wanted to work through it, but I wouldn't have worked through it if I was her, and she didn't either. But yeah, it was an understanding. It would. Do you know what? Talking about love, on the third day, this is the weirdest thing, weirdest experience ever. So on the third day, I was going through some real horrible shit in there, and the shaman come over to me, and for some reason I was like, didn't want him anywhere near me. And he said, you need this to happen, right? And he's got this tube thing, and he puts it on my stomach, and just starts going, sucking this tube, right? And I watch as all this like grey, horrible slime like comes out of my body up in this tube. He takes it into himself, and then he just turns around and just starts vomiting in this bin. and it literally made like 4 liters of vomits coming out of him. And then after he's finished, he just lays down like absolutely spent, like something like off the Green Mile. And I just felt like something happened inside me that just broke. It's like I've always been able to love, but up to there, and it broke open all this stuff in me, and all of a sudden I felt like what real love felt like, and I was just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. The next day I felt totally different, and I'm looking in that bin, and it's like it's full. The sick was real, like he really did vomit that much. And the thing itself, the tube, it was just a solid crystal.
Fucking hell.
Utterly bizarre, but it changed my life forever.
Yeah, so do you think that, so if you say, like, if you had a capacity for like, the vessel in you to love, like you said, it was only allowing you to fill it 3/4 full, do you think that last quarter is the quarter where you get hurt? Do you know what I mean? Do you think that was to protect you?
100%. And like, even when you talk about sensitivity now, like, I feel everything, and it's not nice.
No.
Sometimes it's totally overwhelming. But now I actually feel it, and I don't run from it as much.
I think as human beings, we're conditioned. I mean, even as silly little things like, oh, I've got a slight headache, take a fucking paracetamol. But we're so conditioned to get a dopamine hit, especially now with smartphones. If you look at the younger generation, they're never, ever alone with their thoughts or even in the moment. I mean, it's called mindfulness now. But it's like, oh, go get a biscuit. Oh, look at your phone. Oh, go play a game of Block Blast. Oh, and it's just, so listening to you, like, I find it terrifying. Because it would be irresponsible to say, I don't think I've got any specific abusive episodes that I'm repressing, but the thought of uncovering anything is, and then having to confront it is genuinely, I'm feeling a bit like anxious just listening to this.
That's, I mean, look, we've spoke a little bit briefly before. I think you have probably got stuff you're pushing down. Have you ever, forget ayahuasca for a second, but have you ever sat for 2 days, just your own thoughts, no distraction?
No.
And I tell you why, because that's when stuff starts coming up. And I've sat after ayahuasca, I went and did that and sat for 2 days on my own without any distractions. And quite frankly, I realised why I'd avoided it my whole life, because the thoughts and feelings that come up, I was like a heroin addict cold turkey. It was awful.
But it seemed
experience.
like you didn't have a specific thing like heroin. It was sex, it was food, it was, everything, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was just the whole, like, it was really dark. And do you know what? My journey with all this starts earlier. It starts with ADHD.
Right.
Actually. I realised that my ADHD, because I've got ADHD, it's been a coping mechanism of my brain to avoid thinking and to deliberately be so bad at remembering, because it has to shut all that stuff out. And my journey started probably about 6 years ago, getting diagnosed with ADHD. The psychiatrist always says ADHD comes from, it's when something traumatic happens to a very sensitive child who's also predisposed to having it to ADHD genetically. And the psychiatrist brought my mum into the meeting and asked to talk about stuff with her too. So we're in this meeting, and the psychiatrist is like, talk to me about your childhood. What sort of traumatic events happened in your childhood? And my mum was like, there weren't any traumatic events in his childhood. His childhood was fine.
Yeah.
And he was so defensive. I was like, what was that? But I couldn't remember I couldn't remember much of my childhood at all, which I know is not a good sign.
No, it's a red flag, isn't it?
Little glimpses every now and again. But I was saying to her, like, well, what about this? I'm sure this was quite traumatic for me. She was like, didn't happen like that. You're remembering it wrong. And
classic gaslighting.
So defensive. I was like, what's in that box?
Yeah.
That's kind of what started the process off. And what's weird is even though like the ayahuasca showed me all the sexual abuse stuff and everything, right? I said to my girlfriend at the time when I was going to do the ayahuasca, on the day before I went in, I said, I think this is going to show me sexual abuse from my childhood. So some part of you knows.
Yeah, of course. And it's almost like a detective. you don't like watch Columbo. It's almost like you weren't there, isn't it? You're sort of like looking at your mum's reaction, and you're seeing that as how Columbo would read a suspect's reaction. It's like, but you were the victim, but you're solving a crime as if you're an outsider coming in. It's so powerful, the human fucking brain, how it can just do all this. Because you sort of go, oh, like, I have never uncovered anything like that, but, you know, before I met you, and I think because you're the sort of person that, like, how you thought of the guy running the course, I have in the past been judgmental like that, but I think because I don't see you like you saw him, you sort of like a blokey bloke. I don't know. Maybe that's a shortcoming on my part. I just accept what you're saying more right off the bat from that night we met. I was like, oh, he's like me and he's saying this. It's not like, do you know what I mean? Sure. And so I think the sort of like the messenger is important to us, but obviously when you go ahead and do the actual experience and it's just all bets are off. So that was your ADHD diagnosis and a red flag. You had a sort of like suspicion. Do you think that was your body going, right, we're going to go do this experience. It's all going to come out and let's start drip feeding a little bit out so it's not, do you know what I mean? Almost like priming yourself.
Yeah, well, I think it's obviously it's the connotation to sex, isn't it? And it's like lots of things I did remember. Like I remember lots of stuff in my childhood, like over-sexualized behavior and all that sort of stuff. I recognized so early, and I remember stuff in my childhood from that. And the fact that I had this, you know, sex addiction, it all point. And here's the thing, like it's mad because anything I'd ever read or looked up to do with how I was behaving or my personality type or all these things, there was lots of things that was always pointed to that. Everything I read, and this is another weird one. Any partner I'd had, like any girlfriend, long-term partner, I'd always find out that they'd suffered this type of abuse in childhood.
Right.
And I used to sit there and think, why am I attracting all these messed up women when I had such a stable childhood?
Yeah.
And then it went to like ayahuasca. Ayahuasca showed me all these relationships and why, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, because I know that I've got people in my family that work in child protection, and they say one of the biggest symptoms is children displaying overly sexualized behaviour, like at school. Then but that just carried on through your adult life.
Yeah, it did. And
so has that left a hole? Like, you know, because obviously if you've survived to into your 30s, I guess, I don't know, whatever. You've survived living a certain way, and then you've sort of like complete. I mean, how do you go forward when you've got all these ways of coping, and now the cat's out of the bag, the genie's out of the bottle. How do you go forward?
It's very difficult, and I've had so much therapy and trauma therapy and everything else, but I wouldn't say I'm 100% the finished article.
Who is Joe? Who is?
Yeah, I guess. But what I'm doing is, I guess, loving myself and picking and choosing myself. So you know that I broke up with a girlfriend like 2 days ago.
Sorry.
And I was very sad about it. But I met her, and I just instantly, like, with that mad attachment straight away, really felt like I loved her. But then she kind of triggered some of my wounds deep down and stuff like that, and wasn't willing to love me in the way I needed, sort of thing. Weren't willing to give me reassurance where I wanted it, all this sort of stuff. And previously, what I would have done is I would have stayed with her because I didn't want to lose her. I was too scared of losing her and all the rest of it. I would have broke up. I would have left it with her, and I would have rather like all them like kind of I'd have fulfilled my needs elsewhere by, you know, other women and everything else. And because it felt like she was hurting me, and my natural inclination is to, if I'm getting hurt, it's almost like sabotaging it. I'd get with a girl and I'd cheat on them early because second I felt like I loved them and they could hurt me, I was like, I've got to create some distance here.
And also, do you think that if you've got like self-esteem issues that is from something that's happened to you in your past, if you meet a girl and you cheat and then she dumps you or the relationship ends, you go, well, yeah, I made that happen by cheating. It's also a way of insulating yourself against rejection, isn't it? Because it's not a choice.
Yeah, you're right. All them things. But yeah, so I felt all them things, and she wasn't willing to be what I needed, and I broke it off.
Oh wow, yeah. So
It was a major deal for me, actually. And it was.
I was always. I found it so hard to end relationships. I let relationships limp on a year longer than they should have when I was young, because I just couldn't stay upsetting someone. But I would have. I always think, like, I'm sort of like think that's what the Tories basically just did. It's like I would just be such a bad boyfriend, they would end up dumping me. And that's sort of like how the Tories governed the country for the last year they were in. They were just taking the piss until they got voted out. But so do you think, are you hopeful, or do you think that you're, because it's quite a lot for someone to take on, I guess, isn't it? Someone who's as enlightened as you, and because we all repress things, little things. Like, there are people that walk to every Monday morning to a job they hate, but they can't let themselves think that, or they wouldn't go. So do you feel like you're seeing the world in colour? And like everyone, and is it quite? Are you looking for someone else with your worldview? Because I think it's quite a lot for someone to take on, isn't it?
I think it is a lot to take on, and to be honest, I don't connect with people who are not somewhere on that journey. So one of the things for me, one of the kind of deal breakers for a relationship for me, I won't ever be with somebody who drinks. And alcohol particularly. You mentioned there people going to the jobs that they shouldn't do. Yeah. It all ties into it. Most people in our culture, they work jobs they should never be doing. They're in relationships with people they should never be in. And the only way they cope with it is to drink at the weekend.
It is.
And in actual fact, they have to drink because they're stressed and they're depressed and all the rest of it. If they stop that drink, they'd feel very distressed with the life they've got. And the thing, you're meant to. Yeah. You're not meant to be able to cope with a life you shouldn't be living.
No, that's how we evolve, isn't it? Like, I guess if we as human beings never felt the cold, we've never worked out how to make a fire. Do you know what I mean? Those periods of discomfort is what gives you an impetus to correct your life. But you've done it, and I find this terrifying. Like, when I talk to you about this stuff, I'm equally fascinated. I tell you what I feel. I feel in awe. I'm very awestruck by you and impressed. Do you know what I mean? I feel that. I feel interested, because I'm always interested in these sort of, like, that's what this podcast is about, things outside the sort of like parameters of normality. But I feel fucking terrified. I find it scary as fuck, man. And almost like in the Matrix, if someone said to you, if you take the blue pill, it will be as it is, or if you take the red pill, you would never have took ayahuasca and you go back to how you were before. Would you even be tempted to not open the box or not?
I'd be very tempted.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. You can't
very tempted. So let me tell you what my life looked like before and what it looks like now. So before, I had a beautiful girlfriend who worshipped the ground I walked on, treated me immaculately. I loved her. We had a great sex life. My children were settled in our house. They used to come 3 days a week. I had a relationship with my parents, my sister, and I had a lovely house. I had everything, but I was miserable, and I was struggling, constantly struggling, really struggling, and had to do the addictive things, like the sex stuff, to cope. And now burnt my entire life down, essentially. So I don't have anything to do with the vast majority of my family.
Are they in denial then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
It's sad, but I see the denial is so rooted and impossible for them to. Yeah, I mean, it's sad because I recognise that for my mum to accept, she'd have to change. Her life had burned down as well. Everything she'd know would burn down.
That's what I'm saying, Joe. Not everyone's got the appetite for it like you had. I haven't.
No.
I don't know what's
No.
in there, but I ain't looking. I mean, I will do
Yeah.
one day. But I'm too much of a pussy, mate.
But I mean, look, I mean, I don't think that's true. I think you're on that journey already and
Yeah,
don't even
possibly.
realise it.
Like I said, when I walked in and heard you talking about it, a year before that, I would have turned around and walked out.
Yeah.
I'd have been like, "Who's this guy talking all this bullshit?" You know, that classic masculine bullshit. Do you know what I mean? I was like, it was honestly, it was like, it felt like I'd walked into a warm. You know, if you get into a warm bath, like if you get, you know, if you're in the bath and you're all warm, and then you get out and you're cold, and then you get back in again. It felt like I don't know. It's hard to explain. I felt like I was revisiting you, even though we'd never met before. It's odd feeling.
Definitely. And I think we're all kind of mirrors to each other.
Yeah.
And
it's what you're looking to see, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I was showing you some parts of yourself. But yeah, I think you're on that journey. But yeah, so my life now. You know, I'm back into a rented house. You know, I don't have anything to do with my family. But I'm not traumatized anymore. I'm not in that deep agony all the time, and I've got the shot at, you know, real love and
the real thing.
The real thing, and you know what I recognise has been part of my package my whole entire life is I've both desired and been genuinely, the biggest terror is genuine intimacy, and that was my biggest fear. That's why I cheated on women early, because to have that genuine intimacy and let somebody, I know how sensitive I am, so I know how much somebody can hurt me. But
well, I guess
I won't settle for anything less now. That's it.
If someone close to you when you're a child and you got intimacy with them, haven't you? Your guardians, right? And if one of those betrays you, that is the biggest betrayal of intimacy there could ever be, and at such a formative age. I guess you're terrified of. I mean, could you be terrified of putting all your eggs in that box because this person who I should have loved and trusted me unconditionally did it, so this woman's going to hurt me, right?
Sure, and also, like, I recognise from my childhood really that you know, abandonment is a major deal in mine. You know, my real dad weren't around in every part of my life, and then I know from the ayahuasca that my childhood, not only did I have the abuse coming, but my mum also knew, and she knew, but she still chose,
to keep to keep the family unit together at all costs.
And I recognise with my mum, like, where my abandonment issues started, where if I had to be a certain way, or she would withdraw from me, you know, and still now, if I tried to have a conversation about this, she withdraws from me instantly. So now I've got to have to keep a relationship with mum. It's got to be like surface level stuff. I keep trying, but so I'm naturally so I've developed. I don't know if you've ever done any research into attachment styles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm previously very anxiously attached, and I've always been drawn to avoidant women.
Yeah.
You know, some Freudian stuff happening.
Do you feel like that's? Do you want to earn their affection?
What it is, it's your nervous system doesn't go for what's good for you. It goes for what's familiar. So my natural nervous system, being anxious and trying to win someone over and being unsure and scared, that's natural to me. So I'm recognizing. So I was kind of with my past. With my last girlfriend I was with for, like, you know, only a few weeks really. I was kind of dating a couple of different girls really, just early stage dating, and I chose that one, and I look now and I'm like, it's because she was making me feel as I've always felt, so that, like, strong attraction is all there, but I recognize that that's not the way to go. And
it's just familiar.
And now that my struggle is, and what I'm really hoping to get over, is I've got to recognise real love as opposed to, you know, unhealthy attachment, which is what I've always had, and that's difficult because it doesn't feel like when I'm dating women who are together and and healthy. There isn't that like desperate pull and desperate need to be with them. That level of attraction.
Do you think if you see a woman that's together and healthy, she doesn't need you or wouldn't be interested in you because you're not worthy of someone like that?
I think there's definitely some of that in there as well.
Do you think you deserve love?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the thing. If you think you deserve it, and I think that might be, don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that a new revelation that you feel that? Did you think you've always felt you deserve love?
No, definitely not.
If you feel you deserve it, what's stopping you from getting the correct kind of love? Because that's just beyond the pale. That's not for me. That's for other people, sort of thing.
It's more that I don't recognise it and don't feel it. So
it's just so alien.
And I'll tell you a perfect example of this. I was dating a girl. I was dating a woman. Just before I kind of, let's say 2 months ago, something like that, right? We'd been on a few dates. It was lovely. She was great. She treated me well. We connected on all sorts of things and we talked about everything. Everything was great. And I phoned her and I said, look, everything's been great. I really like you. I'm attracted to you, but there's just something missing for me. I don't know what it is, but when I'm not with you, I'm not feeling like, I'm not thinking about you all the time. I'm not feeling that this desperate need to be with you. And I called it off. And I've started talking to her a bit. She took that really well, and she actually said to me, "I think you actually, because like you passed and everything. I think you're looking for somebody a bit more toxic than I am."
Yeah, I was thinking chaotic even. Was it?
Yes.
You seem a bit drawn to chaos.
100%, mate. 100%. And I do a routine about it on stage and stuff sometimes, and I say like, your subconscious is the thing that's working. That's the thing that picks your partners. I said, so I want a nice woman who's just going to love me and treat me right. But my subconscious is going, what about that married crackhead over there?
Yeah. It's like your subconscious is the worst wingman ever. Like trying to stitch you up.
The worst wingman. Oh, my subconscious. Dude. Oh, I had a girl. I dated this girl for a little bit. And my oh, man, I look back now. And this girl was insane on the first night. Insane on the first night, and like insane sexual, just utterly nuts. And I saw her that first time and I was like, she's crazy. And then I saw her again. It's the same pattern. It's like this intensity at first, followed by them going a bit cold, and then they're on my mind all the time. I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, oh, I need to. And then I've got to try and bridge that gap, and then I've got to try and. But it's all chaos.
Yeah, it's almost like a cowboy, right? A cowboy at the rodeo. They don't want to ride the docile bull, like you get the bull called like Old Psycho, and they're like, I want to ride that one, and it's like it almost sounds like how can I stay on this bull for how long can I stay on for?
Yeah, you're right, and it's all that it is. I can feel it replicating my nervous state as a child.
Yeah.
I can see that like terror, and it's like, and also like when I'm not with them, there's this thing, right? And this is the thing: your nervous system is set in childhood. Unless you deal with your hidden trauma, it stays like that. So there's been times, and I'll tell you this, right? I've previously been a macho man. I'm an ex fighter, all this sort of stuff. But there's times when I'm alone. And I'm walking around my house feeling terrified and scared like a little boy. And I have to stop and go, you're safe. You're safe. What are you scared of? You're safe. And that lack of safety, they replicate that.
The women.
Yeah.
So do you think that little boy, that little scared little boy, is an aspect of your character that stopped growing back then because that is when that was repressed and not dealt with, and it's arrested development, a side of your character?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And it's all inner child work to get that back to something, and how that works. So you recognize that is your inner child, and that's what it was like, and you have to decide, okay, I know my caregivers were meant to take care of me, let me down, but I'm now gonna parent you, and I'm gonna look to you as you should have been treated. And I've got you now. I'll look after you. I'm your grown up now. So that extends to every area of your life. That extends to me ending that relationship because I knew she weren't gonna give me what I needed.
Wow.
It's putting spinach in my mouth and eating that rather than ramming a chocolate down my throat to keep yourself quiet. That's what I got as a kid.
Yeah.
As a kid, that it all ties in. During my abuse and everything else, and after, when I was sad, my caregivers have some sweets.
Shut you up with some goodies, sort of thing.
So I'm not gonna. So if I'm feeling sad and anxious and distressed, I'm not gonna shut myself up with a Mars bar anymore. Because what my child needs is, you should have like
it's amazing. Could have like a mental like adoption ceremony and adopt yourself, basically, this inner child, and
exactly.
Mate, that's so powerful.
And I'm gonna send you something. I'm gonna send you something, mate, after this call.
Yeah, do.
And I want you to just do it. Get yourself in a place where you're not going to be disturbed for 10 minutes. Yeah. I'm going to send you something. Don't overthink it. Just literally from the second the video comes on, just do it. And I want you to tell me what happens after.
I will do. Thanks for that. So you just mentioned you were an ex-fighter. I know you was in the fire service. So you must have been surrounded by a lot of people. Men, let's call it. You must be being surrounded by a lot of men that are suspicious of this kind of turn in your life. Have you shed a lot of friends? Have you encountered much resistance or derision?
Not really. No, I mean, I weren't close to many people in the fire service anyway.
That's
but what's funny about the fire service, the symptom of the fire service is you've got people who are essentially, most people there, to be able to do what you do as a firefighter and see what you see, you already have to be masters at repressing and compartmentalizing them. So they're all pretty much everyone I met was the same. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Same sort of fighters.
Oh, I lost your audio there. Are you there?
Lost my audio.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, it was fucking my ears. But yeah, so it's comedies, because I think I was listening to you, and when you were talking about your patterns of getting a woman and her being cold and wanting to win her over, I was thinking, well, fuck me, if that isn't what we do every working night, we're in front of a room full of strangers, isn't it?
Oh, mate, 100%. And mate, I track my comedy career right back to childhood, and I remember all it is. Because I was in danger a lot. Yeah. Somebody came into the room. I had to be able to read what state of emotions they were in so fast, and then change that atmosphere to make to make them buoyant again, or cheer them up, or whatever. And we do that night after night on stage. We walk on stage. We feel the energy in the room. We tell a little. We look at people. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, and it's so in comedy, have you been open, like when I walked into that room, you're in the middle of being very open. Do you get an impression that there are, because you said that a lot of people in the fire service, I think a lot of comedians that want to win approval of people. Yeah. I bet you're like the Pied Piper, like you definitely attracted me to your sort of like your energy and your journey. So do you find a lot of comedians that message you on the sly going, actually, I think I know what you're talking about? You must be sort of like become like a confidant for people.
Yeah, massively. And in every walk of life, really, I am. And it's comedians especially, we're some of the most traumatized humans walking the 100%. Planet.
It's not normal what we do, and why it's not normal to want to do it, I think is the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, no, you're right. It's not normal. It is really not normal. And part of my difficulty after ayahuasca and stuff has been I don't really need to do it. You know what I mean?
I know. I know because obviously I know that you're sort of like, I'm just going to go and do this now. I'm not going to do comedy. And for me, who's not as far down the road as you, maybe haven't even started at all, I'm like, what? How could you stop? How could you go to like Asia and not do comedy? Do you know what I mean? That gives me. So anyone listening, we talked about how there's all these Western. I think they are sort of like mainly Western coping mechanisms. I think I know what your answer might be: alcohol. But what is the one thing you would urge anyone listening to this who might be sort of like unhappy with where they are and not sure how to sort of like start the change? Is there one thing that you would say definitely you got to change that?
Yeah. Allow yourself to think and feel everything for a period of time. Set yourself a week, 2 weeks, where instead of going, oh God, I'm sad, I need to do something, or oh God, I'm thinking about that, quick, shake that off. Just give yourself a period of time, let's say a week to start with, where you are allowed to think and feel everything, and that does, because you don't realize how many times through a day you stop that or block that.
I'm becoming more aware of it. Yeah, but I know like phones are the devil for that, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And look, I'm not perfect. I've still got definitely an addiction to phones and phone screens and stuff like that. And look, I'm not saying I'm the finished article by any stretch.
Yeah.
But I think there is some level of hope that I didn't have before. And also the main thing is there's a Carl Jung quote that is, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it'll dictate your life and you'll call it fate. And I can definitely say that's true. And it's important to remember as well that people who've gone through this type of abuse as children, 40% repress it so bad they have got zero recollection. So that's a huge number, 40%. So like, and that's just that type. There's lots of things we repress in childhood. And when you look at your relationships, you have like women, for instance, who will go from one partner to the next and get beat up in every one of them relationships. And as an outsider, you think, why? Well, they're not. What's happening? They're not going, that man's going to beat me up. But the relationships start the same. And what they're doing is that person is making their nervous system feel as it is their children. And that cycle repeats and repeats and repeats. So until you like deal with this stuff, which starts with just allowing yourself to think and feel everything, and then things will come up and you'll learn what you have to. Until you do that, the cycle of your life is just going to go on and on and on. That's it.
Beautifully put, Joe. Listen, I feel like I have to get you back on in a bit because I could feel like we've only just scratched the surface. You talk about it with such courage and in a matter-of-fact way. I find it quite inspiring, to be honest with you.
Thanks, man.
Okay, well, that's Joe Zalias. Have you got anything? Where can people find you if people want to find you?
Joe Zalias comedian on Instagram. Joe Zalias on Facebook, and I'm wearing a colourful shirt on my profile because I've got an old one somewhere. But yeah, like if this has triggered anything with anybody and people want to get in touch and actually talk to me, I'm an open book. I will talk to people.
Well, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, he's a fantastic comedian. If you haven't seen Joe live, I urge you to check your local comedy clubs and go see him, predominantly in the north, but gets all over the place. So thanks so much, Joe. That's amazing, mate. Cheers, mate.
That's one just in. See you, mate.
Cheers, Joe.
Bye.